which is longevity and purposefulness. John Henry.
John Henry.
Terrific. Well, thanks, Ken. That was very, very nice. We have this kind of Blue Zone group on. This is my longevity plan right here. This is Fox, Sweet Pea, Sarah, come here. Come here. This is Sarah. This is Sarah. Sweet Pea. They're worth. My wire-haired dachshunds are worth 5 years on longevity. Easily. They're oxytocin hormone booster shots. Huh? Okay, good. So 3 years ago, Dan Sullivan, who's an entrepreneur coach, asked me how long I wanted to live. And I was 72 years old then, and no one had ever asked me that question. And I hadn't given any serious thought. And Dan said that he had a longevity plan to live to be 154. So that got my attention. So I spend most of my longevity talk time with experts, and we have a number of them here tonight, and I'll introduce them as we go through it. And with other people like me, I go around the country, and so it's all, they're totally into this. So this is a, so I guess, I'd like to begin with this question. How many of you here, put your hand up, have a longevity plan? You got 1, 2, Tanya, yeah. I know Tanya would. Yeah, you have 3, 4. Okay, you already have achieved it, right? Yeah, you're telling me. Okay, 5. So, all right. So that just gives us a reference point. So, how many of you have a purpose that is the reason for your longevity plan? Of the 5,
The purpose of what?
for why you want to stay alive. A purpose. Okay. 2, 3. Okay. So 3. Okay. So. And by purpose, I mean a goal that requires you to extend your life so that you can achieve your purpose, right? It's going to be hard to do it if you're dead. So I believe that if you don't have a purpose, you're unlikely to live to 100. Now, you can be lucky rather than smart, and I always like to be lucky rather than smart. But now, by way of illustration, I have 2 purposes which will take more time than I have without a serious longevity plan. So my first is to build a large property casualty insurance company, and this will give me the resources to achieve my second purpose, which is to, as Ken said, to make the bison great again, which is shorthand for what we can talk about. But purpose alone has to be, see, there's my purpose. The purpose has to be accompanied by the right mindset if your longevity plan is going to be successful. You have to have the right longevity mindset, and that is that every day you can make dozens of decisions which will improve your probabilities of living a long, healthy life. And dozens of decisions every day. That's the mindset. And since this is a golf club, I thought, well, I hope you won't mind me taking the liberty of giving you a golf analogy. So, all of you who are golfers here know that the difference between a high handicapper, for those of you who don't play golf, that's a poor golfer, and a good golfer is a low handicapper. Now, the high handicapper, when he hits a bad shot, he thinks the bad shot's going to go on forever, and he hits a good shot, and he doesn't think it's going to last. And the low handicapper, the good golfer, when he hits a good shot, he thinks that's going to go on forever, and he hits a bad shot and doesn't think it'll last. So the high handicapper puts you mindset puts you in a position to lose, and the low handicapper puts you in a position to win. And my view is that longevity is the same is true of longevity. That if you don't have a longevity plan, the odds are against you living a long time. If you have a longevity plan and the requisite longevity mindset to execute your purpose, then your odds are much better. And we're not talking about certainty here. Remember, life is, as you know, can throw many things at you. So we're only talking about probabilities. And since I'm in the insurance industry, that's what we do is probabilities. So my whole talk is premised on probabilities. So what exactly is a good longevity plan? I mean, once you have a purpose and you have a longevity mindset to go with the purpose, I believe that your longevity plan ought to focus on 5 things, right? Because you're not going to do these 5 things unless you have the purpose and the mindset, all right? But if you do have the purpose and the mindset, then this is what I would recommend that you do. And so what are the 5 things? It's how well you eat, it's how well you exercise, it's how well you sleep, it's how strong your relationships are, and it's your environment. And I'll go through all those 5 very briefly and leave most of our time together here for Q&A, because I want to engage with you on what you're interested in. So we can drill down on any one of these subjects that are of most interest to you.
John, can we move you closer?
Yeah. So, yeah. Sure. I can. Yeah. Right. All right. I'll show. So so we're going through the 5 things. You have a purpose and you have the mindset to execute the plan, the purpose. So what do you do? Well, it's how well you eat, it's how well you sleep, how well you exercise, your relationships, and your environment. So let's start with eating. So my statement was you can't eat too well. And food is medicine, and medicine is food. I'm not sure whether it was Aristotle or one of the ancient Greeks, I think, first said that. But it was Hippocrates. Yeah, so Hippocrates said that, and it's so true. And when we're talking about dozens of decisions every day, every time you put something in your mouth, you're influencing your odds one way or the other. And so fiber is the key. Now, animals, we're animals. All mammals stand up with skeletons. But if we don't have a skeleton, we don't stand up. But plants have fiber to stand up. And so we need that fiber. And so in our ancestors, basically, were 80% living off of plants. And get their iron from a little meat occasionally when it came in, but not huge 12, 16-ounce steaks, but just little pieces of meat. I try to eat, and you should try to eat, if you have 40 grams of fiber a day, and try to eat at least a dozen vegetables. Now, John-Eve Murphy is here tonight, and John-Eve, can you stand up here? Yeah? John-Eve is my gardener, and she grows 83 vegetables for me. And she knows what works. Ann says, "Oh, we love this plant, this thing from France," but John-Eve said, "No, it won't grow here." But she knows that there are a lot of things from Asia and Latin America and Africa that do grow here, and that's in our 83 plants. And so we can, and what John-Eve is growing for us is 2 or 3 times more, has more vitamins and minerals than anything you can buy at Wegmans. You can't buy it in the market. So that is, I think that's a really big deal. And so I think that as part of any longevity plan, you should try to eat at least a dozen vegetables every day, different ones. And I'm not vegan, but I eat just enough meat, but no more to give me the iron I need. And I should also say alcohol. I quit drinking 11 years ago, and I don't think alcohol is. But that's very personal because the people that don't like to drink, it's less of a problem than people that do like to drink. And 5% of the people drink 95% of the stuff. So those are the people that particularly shouldn't do it. If you want to have a longevity plan. So Tanya Hugas is here. Tanya, stand up. Tanya is an expert on dark field microscopy, which is something that you'll learn more about if you're interested. We'll go into that. And but the point here is that you're no better than your blood, and your blood will tell you everything you need to know about yourself. And so we can get into that later. But when the government got into healthcare in '65, they outsourced all the blood work, and so the blood work.
Excuse me 1 second. Did anybody mention water?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you might
Man,
care for some.
thank you so
No
much.
problem.
So the dark field is uses live blood, and I think it's a tremendous window into your health, and we can get into that if you're interested in more detail. Based on my live blood, Tanya selects the vegetables, which Mary Bartlett, Mary, stand up here. Mary's my chef, and she cooks for me what Tanya says that I need based on what my blood tells Tanya. Right? So the blood tells Tanya, and Tanya tells Mary, and they both tell John Eve what to grow. So that's kind of the food chain there. So we use Eliza Wilcox. Are you here? Where, Eliza? There you are. Yeah. Eliza is apprenticing under Tanya, and she and both of them use the dark field microscopy to monitor my blood. We're getting we got this amazing new microscope that has got 5 levels of magnification. It's very exciting. A picture is worth not 1,000 words, but 1,000,000 words. And so I'm very visual, so I just love it. And so what you eat controls your microbiome, and your microbiome drives your immune system. And so this microbiome in our gut there are about 10 times more of those organisms than we have cells in our body. And they've been here for about 2 or 3 billion years, and we've only been here 300, 400, 500. 300,000. Okay. Right. Homo sapien, we haven't been around very long. So these guys have really, it's like we've delegated to our microbiome like Congress has given their job away. We've pretty much given our immune system up to the microbiome. And so I'm very focused on that. For 3 years I've been using Sun Genomics, which has tailor-made probiotics to increase the market share of different ones. So what you put in your mouth is going to change the balance of power in your microsystem. So if you eat bad things that are not good for you, a lot of starch and sugar, you're going to be strengthening the bad guys in your microbiome. And if you eat, like I was saying, 40 grams of fiber a day and all these vegetables, you're going to have a very strong microbiome. So my immune system was tested at 31 years old recently. So I asked Ann which I should have a birthday party for my 31st birthday, and she did not think that was such a good idea. So we're still discussing that. So the next plank in your longevity plan is exercise, and I try to walk 2.5, 3 hours a day. I average right now. I've been averaging about 7.12 miles a day, which will give you 2,600 miles in a year. So if you take off from Warrington or Washington on January 1st, you will end up at the end of December in LA. So last year, my dogs that you saw, who are Olympic dogs, and people always say, how many steps, you know? Well, gosh, they're taking 3 or 4 or 5 steps for every one I'm taking, but they walked 2,600 miles last year. And so if I walk 2,600, the price is right, and Ed here he does, how many miles did you walk, Ed, in across Europe and these different?
1,400.
1,400, but you were averaging, you were doing all day long,
20 to 25
25 kilometers
kilometers,
a day.
a day.
So you were walking 8 hours a day, 10 hours, someday 10 hours? Yeah.
6
So that is more than I'm doing, but I'm just trying to do 3 hours. Now you can be sure that no one would be here if our ancestors didn't walk at least 3 hours a day. So that is really what we were designed to do. Maybe not do that much, but 3 hours a day. So I find it, I can be on the cell phone, I can do a lot of business calls and with the dogs. It's just, it's not like Mark Twain said, golf is a good walk spoiled. So I'm not worried about competing with the guy next to me when I'm walking. It's a different kind of thing. So that's the exercise, and actually, if you do that for 10 years, you know, it's 26,000 miles around Earth. In 10 years, if you walk all the way to LA and equivalent, then you walk around the world. And so that's what I hope to do in the next 10 years. And with the dachshunds, it's a very joyful thing. Now, my longevity trainer, we're talking about exercise. Juan, where are you? Juan's right here, and Juan is from Warrington. And so I come over half an hour from Flint Hill to Warrington 3 times a week, an hour with him and then half an hour back. And we do that 3 times a week when I'm here. And I would never do these things. I would never do this if it weren't for Juan. I mean, right? I mean, even though I'm very disciplined and have a lot of willpower, I find it hard to believe that I could do it without him. And he gets me so positive I can't stand myself. He encourages me to do things that I wouldn't otherwise do. And so I can recommend him very highly. Juan can tell you later if you want to go into more detail about how we work on bone density and muscle mass. We do cardio and balance. And there's a new test. I'll get into the diagnostic side but it's not part of the 5 points. There's a new test that has they call it a motion age that I'm testing at 52 years old. And so Juan and I have a plan to get me in the 40s, and then we'll see how far we can go, right? So the third plank in your longevity plan is sleep. And I've been using an Oura Ring. I didn't bring it tonight because it's charging. I've been doing that for about 3 years now, and I try hard to get in the 90s every night. You should breathe through your nose rather than through your mouth. If you breathe through your nose, you're alkaline, and if you breathe through your mouth, it makes you acidic. So in the Q&A, we can do a deeper dive on sleep. It's a really big subject, and something that I'm spending a lot of time thinking about and doing things.
What's the ring about?
What's that?
What's the ring about?
It measures how much, it will tell you your time in bed. It'll tell you how much time you actually were asleep. And then it breaks down the categories of sleep between deep sleep, which is great for you, and then REM, rapid eye movement, and light sleep. And if you get up and go to the bathroom, you'll have a little white thing. And so if you got a lot of white during the night on your score, rather than these darker colors. So I'm all over that in terms of there's a Whoop and there's the Apple. There are a number of different, quote, wearables that,
John, what about, I know you're going to talk about this later, but what about hours of sleep? What's
yeah, you want to get 8 hours sleep if you can. If I could average 8 hours of sleep, and if I could get an hour of deep sleep, an hour of REM sleep, I could conquer the world. I mean, it's just, it's so important. And so, but life intervenes, and there are trade-offs, and so I'm never, but the perfect is the enemy of the good, and I'm always trying to improve on that.
So you're getting 7 miles a day, or are you getting 7 hours of sleep a day?
Yeah, I'm averaging over 7. I try to get 8, but I haven't averaged 8. But, and
I know alkaline and
acidic.
acidic in soil, but how do you explain the nose and the mouth? How do you get alkaline in one place and breathing the other you get acidic? Why?
I'm not sure. Do any of our experts know the answer to that? Why? I just know that it's true, but I'm not sure. We're designed to breathe through our nose, and I know that if you breathe through your mouth, I'm never 100% sure that I'm breathing through my mouth, even though I think I am. But some people will tape their mouth so that they know that they didn't.
Well, your nose warms the air, and the hairs in your nose clean the air. Those are 2 important things. There's something about breathing through your mouth that really dries out
Dries your,
your mouth and your throat.
I just know it's not good for you, but I haven't really done a deep dive
Well,
on
it
it.
cuts down on the nitric oxide.
Okay,
So nitric oxide is very, very important in the promotion of.
so NO, so Tanya and I will binge on arugula and get nitric oxide highs. And if you have all this NO firing through your endothelium, you get your blood cells jump like Mexican beans. So it's all tied together. It's a very so the fourth plank now is your relationships with your family. And as a citizen, you want to be present in the public square, right? You have to spend a fair amount of time, if you're interested in self-government, you have to dedicate a fair amount of time to try and understand the complex world that we live in. But in terms of, but that isn't a substitute for being present at home with your spouse and your children. And I believe that access to your unconscious is the critical element in improving your relationships with those closest to you. I've been working for 2 years, my son too, with a guy named Jason Fernando, who has a unique ability in meditation, uses breath work, Kabbalah, color, visualization to knock down the door to your unconscious. So that's a whole another thing, because you can do all this other stuff, and if you can't get along with your wife and your kids, you're not gonna make it. It's just not gonna happen. So it's acidic, right? It's toxic, and so you really have to. People that I see, like this guy Brian Johnson, who spends $2 million a year testing and putting a biomarker. He has a biological age for each of his. We all have 70 organs, and he knows exactly what his age is on all 70 organs. He's spending a lot of money and time to drive that age down every year. But he lives with he doesn't have a wife, and I just don't think it's going to make it. He can spend all this money and have all these. He can do all these things, but
It's good to know that a wife can play with.
it is. It is. My wife is here, and Ann will tell you that she deserves a badge for every year we've been married. Okay, so we can go into that. We can go into that one more. And then the fifth plank in your longevity plan is your environment. And I think it's quite obvious that it's healthier to live in the country than in the city. And I hope I'm preaching to the converted here that Warrington is a better place to live than Washington, D.C. In terms of your health. And 3 years ago, I moved from my principal residence to our farm in Rappahannock County. And I think that makes a difference. So let me stop there now. I've kind of skimmed across the top and hit these 5 things that I think that's where your energy ought to go into those things. If you do want to stick around, you can do a lot of things, and I hope it was funny. We were having dinner with a friend of Ann's, and I went in the other room to get on the computer, and she looked up, she was saying to my wife, I overheard her, she said, he's delusional. So I think it's very healthy to be delusional, because you don't want to read too many Jane Austen novels that fate determines character. You're in a much better position in terms of mindset if you think character determines fate than if you think that life is just whatever's thrown at you. So let me open it up to questions, and we've had a few, but let's do that, and go ahead, John. You came all the way from West Virginia, so you're.
John, what's the role of supplements, if anything? What's the role of supplements, if any, in your regimen?
Yeah, I do.
And what do you think about the increasing number of kind of energy technologies that
Sure.
or to add energy to your mitochondria and so on?
Okay, so yeah, I didn't get into the diagnostic side, but I'm a member of. So Peter Diamandis is kind of the Jonathan Edwards of longevity and AI, and those two things are converging at warp speed. And so he and Tony Robbins, Peter Diamandis and Tony Robbins have a bestseller called Life Force, and Peter they formed a company called Fountain Life. I think it's a better deal to be a customer of it than an investor in it, because I don't see how they're going to scale it. So I have a functional so I fired my doctor 3 years ago. It was a 20-year doctor, and I hired 5 functional medicine integrative health doctors, and so now I have this lady. She's in Tampa, and I'm on the phone with her not every week, but more than 2 times a month, and we're drilling down on one of these subjects that we're talking about. So basically, you do this big once a year. I'm doing my blood every quarter with her, but that's dead blood because, as I said, when the government got into healthcare, they forced the blood out of the doctor's office into the labs for a bunch of complicated reasons having to do with conflict of interest. So the bad news is that it divorced the medical profession from looking at live blood. But based on the dead blood, she's recommending that I need all these supplements. So are you low on D? So D is not really a vitamin, but you need a lot of D. Even though I'm getting all this sun, I'm getting more sun. I'm getting as much sun as John Shaw Remington there is from Canada. One of the best stonemasons in the world is here tonight. He's building a tower for us in Rappahannock. And John gets more sun than I do, but probably, I'm getting a lot of sun, but I don't necessarily. D is not a bio. So when you see people taking all these supplements, the one thing that always goes through my mind is it bioavailable. Some are and some aren't, right? And so D is not. So I take a very special kind of activated D. But anyway, the functional integrative health, we're focused on causality rather than managing symptoms. They will tell you, based on the dead blood, exactly what what supplements you ought to take. And then we turn around with Tanya and we say, okay, she's got an advantage over because she does live blood. And the live blood, basically, we have a higher basis for confidence as to what is rate limiting, right? And then what we're trying to do is get rid of all the supplements by getting Mary, Tanya saying this is what we need, and then John Eve grows it and Mary does it and makes it taste good. So I'm not, a monk here. It's actually pleasant. And your palate changes. So your microbiome, when something tastes good or not to you, that's just what the guys that are the balance of power that's down there now says. But if you actually start to eat better and move towards a plant-based diet, and then your taste changes in a month or so, something that may not have tasted. So if you can kind of, like with fermented foods, I pretty much split the fairway with Sun Genomics 3 years ago, and now I'm up at 75%. I'm in the top, but the only way I'm going to basically get any better is eat a lot more fermented foods. So anyway, the supplement thing is huge. My goal is to get rid of them. I want to throw away my crutches and get it from food rather than. But in the meantime, until we can do that, I'm going to do the supplements. Ann.
Can you explain to the folks the difference between dead blood and live blood, between what Tanya does and what LabCorp does?
Yes, I think the best person to explain that would be Tanya. Tanya, you want to take that one?
Oh, goodness.
I'm just using shorthand there, but we can do it more technically.
Hi.
Hello.
So I'm Tanya Hughes, and my story is 50 years ago, I'm 75. I faced a situation like cancer, right? It was very similar to cancer. So we know what was happening 50 years ago. We were in a fight with Vietnam, and so a lot of Eastern influence came. I'm a little nervous about talking, so just okay.
You're doing great.
It is a good group.
You're doing fine.
So I was facing a complete hysterectomy. So like John, right, you have to determine purpose to change your behavior. So because at such a young age, and I had actually given a baby up for adoption, right? So facing a complete hysterectomy meant that I would not have children. So I was very, very driven. I had very extreme endometriosis, and it had covered my intestinal tract. So I was facing a major hysterectomy. I was about 22. I'm, a little older than that. And as I was crawling across campus, and this group of hippies were going against, the Vietnam War, I said to them my situation, and they said there's a Taoist teacher up in Boston teaching a dietary approach called Zen macrobiotics. Anybody familiar with that community? So it was a high fiber, high antioxidant diet, very vegetable based, and within 2 years I was able to overcome it, and I conceived a second child in 1978, and I went on to have 4 more children, and the doctors were really astounded because I didn't have any scar tissue. So I got introduced to what, basically? A diet that was based on anti-inflammatory, because most of our diseases in the Western world is what? Based in inflammation. So the dietary approach that I gave John 3 years ago was very vegetable-based. So what was the original question? I know.
So the blood, now how do you go?
Right.
So
after that.
When you send the blood out to the doctor.
Thanks. I always I used to be a presenter. I haven't presented in a long time, so. So in 1996, I had a very large group of representatives, and we were promoting certain seaweed-based foods. Has anybody ever heard of blue-green algae or All right, so the healthiest populations in the world do consume a lot of algae or seaweed-based products. So they said, hey, there's this doctor, and he's doing a thing called live blood cell analysis. So we all drove down to see him, and he had a microscope. He would take a tiny bit of blood, he would mount it on slides, then bring the picture in on a TV set, and he would explain exactly what optimal blood was, right? So optimal blood, the plasma appears dark, free of any kind of inflammatory. Red blood cells, you produce 260 billion of them on a daily basis. So that is part of homeostasis, right? Homeostasis is composed of what? Circulation, digestion, he was talking about the gut biome, and then hormones, right? So when you look at a drop of the blood live, you can make an estimate of how well this person is circulating an alkaline gas, which is what? You inhale it through your nose, oxygen. And that has to be carried through 60,000 miles. Every one of you has 60,000 miles of arteries and capillaries. And it delivers oxygen, nutrition to your mitochondria. Somebody questioned mitochondria. And also your white blood cells, your defense, is carried in the rush of blood. And most Americans are facing heart disease, and their blood is what? Very, very congestive. So they have to be put on, statins
Well,
and
a lot of statins.
other
It's
things.
$30
right?
billion worth of statin sales.
Right. So with live blood, you get a viewing, and you can make a nutritional, we don't practice medicine, I don't practice medicine, I don't run a lab, but you can see the nutritional status of blood, and you can correct it. You know, first John had to use some supplementation, now we almost have him on a full range of dietary approach to provide everything. So the regular lab work that is done in hospitals, and it wasn't like a government conspiracy or anything, but we were creating Medicare or Medicaid, right? And so we looked at the hometown doctor, and we basically said, hey, we want to take this out of your hands, right? And when that was done, taking that microscope out of the hometown doctor's office, we stopped a nutritional approach to blood, right? So what I do is completely nutrition, but when they stopped live blood, which your hometown doctor used to do up until the 70s, they were simply classifying blood work so that the government could, create a program to pay for it, which I think is Medicare or Medicaid or
Right.
whatever, right?
And
So it took out the live blood, and what they do now is they centrifuge blood. And you can tell a lot. You know, it's a very valid testing, but with the kind of live blood that I do, and it does come from German doctors. So as we have Pasteur, right, as our father of allopathic medicine, dark field microscopy has Endelin, Gunther Endelin, and he used that, the live blood to look at the blood to make a nutritional assessment. He started that in the 1920s. So if you ever go into Google, just put in the lost history of medicine. And the German doctors I study under do this live blood approach. So any questions about that? I did pretty good for doing my first presentation like in 10 years. Okay.
What is the difference between live blood and dead blood? I mean,
All right, well, he calls it dead blood.
this is
I
what I
think the
call,
word, use of those two words mischaracterize the difference, but
It does,
Yeah.
yeah, and I wouldn't use such strong language. I'm not ready
Well-
to throw out Pasteur
no,
and just
we're going
bring
both.
in Endelin.
Both have, I'm doing
Both
my,
of them have validity.
I'm not doing
right.
my supplements off of Tanya, I'm doing I'm doing the supplements off the integrative health functional medicine doctor with the blood 4 times a year, right? But then once we get that, then she goes to work and gives me alternatives.
Can I answer that question?
Yeah,
Sure.
go ahead.
Yeah, with the live blood, you So you will see the movement of the red cells.
Right,
The movement of,
yeah.
you will see the white cells moving around, cleaning the blood. When you do the blood at LabCorp, what they will do, they will count your red cells, they will count your white cells, but they don't see the cells in action. That's the difference.
And so what Monique is saying is you see the zeta potential, the electrical charge. So when you view blood, living blood, you want to see, is it congestive? And most people, I've done over 10,000 views using this technology. And different populations have different zeta potential within their blood. Actually, the best blood I ever saw were Ethiopians. That blood was amazing. And their primary,
Ann had some of the best blood you've ever seen.
and Ann's got, she's in that 1 percentile,
So-
Ann. His blood was not very good.
Well, I had, my blood,
All right, so, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so what blood type are you and what blood type is Ann?
what are you?
Right, I don't know.
You don't know what blood type you are?
Well, we knew before we,
Doctor, and they wouldn't tell me.
Oh, okay.
yeah. I
Right.
think we knew that before.
But there
we
is a
got-
blood type
It's
diet.
not the type of blood, I
Right.
don't believe, is it? But, you know, and it's usually negative or positive, like I'm A. It's not negative. I'm A negative.
And there's RH factors.
There's a whole,
Right, right.
there's a book on that, and
Yeah, about-
there is a point of view that you
Yeah,
want to have
eating
a
for the
very.
blood, and he's also a
What
microscopist.
you eat.
But I don't, see what he gets into in eating for your blood type is certain proteins will cause congestion, and that is true, right?
But the first time you looked at mine, you said it was great, but you said, oh, you eat a lot of sugar. It's totally true.
Okay.
So it made me eat less sugar.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because she had, see, in the Pastorian model, we say that blood is sterile, right? But in the Endoline model, we say it's rich with microflora. So we're actually looking for a cyclogeny of a certain presence within blood. And then you get into pleomorphism versus monomorphism, right? So my
So I think
task
li-
with him.
I think
okay.
live and dead, it sounds simpler, right?
Right, right.
But I've done
But
biosafety.
there's a whole science, there's a whole wealth of knowledge. And as we begin to
What?
understand how microbial we are, right? Many of
Yeah.
so many hospitals are opening up biome research. It's huge. And believe me, blood is not sterile. So Ann points out
So-
that there was a certain bacterial form within her blood that showed me, wow, she's eating too much sugar. And she is changing her terrain. So when you look at blood, and there's Eliza, she's training as a
What?
microscopist.
To make one comment about live blood too, it's an incredible window. It's an incredible window to see what is happening in your environment right now. Like, what are you putting into? What is the stress on your body? Back to relationships, or you're eating too much sugar. It's a great window right now where dead blood is not really going to give you this insight at this moment.
And also they make a range
And
in
your
blood.
range is,
Right,
is
yeah,
very
right.
large,
So-
where
Right.
optimal would be.
So Liza is training with Tanya, and they've both taken this course in, Monique took it in Canada, right? You took the course in Canada, and Tanya and Eliza have taken it in London. And we got the super microscope now, and I think you have a super microscope. So anyway, the only thing you should take home is that I'm a blood chauvinist, okay? And blood is really, you got no chance. It's the best window. It's a wonderful window into yourself, and modern medicine doesn't get into that. They don't really teach nutrition. They don't really teach the immune system. And if you want to have a longevity plan, you better have nutrition and the immune system front and center. Jack.
You haven't mentioned anything about genes, I don't think. Maybe I came in late, but did you?
No, I didn't get into that, but basically,
can do whatever you want, that enough, but the genes are 80% what's going to return.
Right.
Repeat the question.
Well, what did he say? Yeah.
I know, what I'm
I'll
talking
repeat
about here, those people who are extremely abusive and doing nothing that you would recommend.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the
Where
most,
do you think this all plays in?
well, that's one of the most fundamental questions, Jack. It's a great question because it's one of the most basic misunderstandings. The numbers are all over the place, but basically the highest number is that your genes really control 7% of your health outcomes, and epigenetics controls 93%. Now there's 90-10s and 80-20s and 75-25s, but basically you're born and you die with the same genes. All right, your genes are not changing; it's the expression, right? It's going to drive your health span and your lifespan, and so the whole thing is that you have. All right, so I make a joke about reading too many Jane Austen novels that fate determines character. And most people believe, if you buy the narrative that our genes control everything, then it's basically predestination. My mother was a Presbyterian, and she had my dad accused her of having an overdeveloped sense of the inevitable, but she didn't know what the alternative was.
I always heard it was like 80-20.
It's primarily, I think it's at least 9-to-1 gene expression, epigenetics. So you can control that, Now, there are certain diseases that are genetic based, right? But most people are going to live or die on what they do, the choices they make, rather than. So it's a fundamental misunderstanding, and David.
Going off that topic of genes, there's a book called The pH Miracle that I don't know if you're familiar with, but it seems to have like a sweet spot. There's like alkalinity is the higher point, and then the acidity is the lower point, and there's like a 7.14 kind of sweet spot. And a lot of people sort of struggle to fall into that, but obviously different gene expressions, like I heard that for a lot of people, like tomatoes and the seeds in them, and then the skins on cucumbers and things like that can cause acidity. So I was wondering if you knew of any knowledge.
Oh gosh, the whole acidity, alkaline.
That's inflammation, right?
Yeah.
So tomatoes do have a pigment in them called selagine or selenine.
Mhm.
Does anybody? And if you have arthritis, that will inflame it. So tomato isn't good or bad, but for somebody with arthritis, it can really flare it up. And as far as genes are concerned, what I really suggest to all of you is there's a YouTube on blue zones. Has anybody watched that, or have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Right. So about 14 years ago, our government came out and said there's a threat, and that threat is MRSA, right? Because we've overused antibiotics. So antibiotics isn't good or bad. In many instances, it saves us, right? So they went and they researched, evolution, and they found the very thing he's talking about, that you are a walking biome. You are 90% microbial, and you need to keep them within this set point of 7.4. So that's where alkalinity and acid comes in. So National Geographic fund a program and research. Dan Buettner is now on YouTube, and it's called Blue Zones, because they isolated 6 areas around the world. They circled it with a blue magic marker. So 50 years ago, I was given an Okinawa diet. To this day, I eat seaweed every day. I served him seaweed, which Mary made incredibly. And
Yeah, he was
it's
in
very,
Orlando.
very
I met him.
plant-based. It's more fish.
I met Dan, and he was in Orlando at the Lake Nona Impact Forum last week, and he has a book out called Blue Zones, and
Blue
he has
Zones,
a
right.
company that will go and create a blue zone
In your
city
city,
or town.
right.
So Jacksonville, Florida just paid him $20 million to make Jacksonville, Florida blue zone.
No
now.
kidding. Wow.
Yeah, and so when Ken, where are you? When you were giving the introduction, we really, our coffee group on Sunday morning is really kind of a blue zone thing, because all these communities, and whether it's in this little island in Greece, off of Greece, or whether it's Sardinia, or whether it's this place in Costa Rica or Okinawa, or this one religious community in California, these blue zone, these people are very connected, and they're very point blank on each other, and they're so they live to be 100. They're not Lone Rangers. They're not, Tonto and Lone Ranger, the Marlboro Man. They're very everything. It takes a village, and so they're very tied, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. I don't think we've conceptualized it that way, but that's really what's going on. Yeah.
So I was gonna say, so let's say that the folks here have seen, oh, this is a wake-up call for me. How do I get started? I don't know, as much about it as you guys do, so what were some of your entry steps in getting into this so that people can think about, well, how can I integrate some of these things we've talked about in our lives, that they can get their arms around it?
Talk about the community thing, having a community of people you regularly meet with, good friends, they're huge.
Yeah, community is
All the
really
blue zones are
a big part of it. Yeah. Well, how do you get into it? Well, I think longevity is a unique ability. I think everybody's very different, and it all depends. So I kind of got into it. Well, okay, so so when I went back to my 50th reunion at Harvard, everybody has been spit out by the big corporation or the big law firm, and they're really quite lost because their identity has been derivative, right? So when I went and worked for a couple of years with Dan Sullivan, he's the best entrepreneur coach in the country. He's talking about people who built an institution around their personality. They haven't fit their personality in an institution. They're entrepreneurs, so they basically tell people what to do. The market tells them what to do, but basically, for me, it was just shocking that he thought that there was that much choice, because I thought things were just what they are, like most people. So when I was on this longevity thing that he had Peter Diamandis on, and he talked about this Cleary test. And because I had a high coronary calcium score, and I thought, so the answer is nothing like a hanging to focus the mind. So I went and, before he was over, I had Max, he'd signed me up for the Cleary test. And the Cleary test is they put you through so 650,000 people die every year from heart attacks in America after $30 billion of statin sales. There are $11 billion products in statins. So to me, that doesn't sound like very successful, right? The $30 billion in sales is very successful business, but you got all these people dying, right? So that tells me it doesn't work. So I went and got this Cleary test, and what they do is they run you through a CAT scan, and they put a little thing in your blood, and they get a dye, and they do a big data dump, big data. Then that goes to New York, runs through this very high-tech algorithm that this Chinese-American cardiologist has devised, and then it comes back and it'll pictorialize your 4 arteries and tell you exactly how much hard and soft plaque. So the whole heart attack thing's based on the stress test, and it's the wrong thing. It isn't the hard plaque that kills you, it's the soft. And then it gradates the soft into 3 color categories. So if you have red, look out, it's hot. And then, so I know exactly how much soft and hard plaque I have in each of these 4 arteries. And so that got me, I came to Jesus on that. So I had a lot of time for I fired my regular doctor during COVID, and I fired the heart doctor. I had this other heart doctor that helped me with my immune passport. And I had a lot of time for him, but I showed him the Cleary results, went right over his head. So this guy, George Shapiro, who's Diamandis and Tony Robbins' heart doctor, I hired him. And so I now, so I think the answer to the question is, it's nothing like a hang to focus the
Yeah.
mind. And I thought, oh my God, I got to solve this problem, and we're working on it. Tanya, we're working on it through diet and through. I've got 3 or 4 things I'm doing parallel path, and I don't really. In the end, I'm not running an experiment. I just want to get rid of the plaque. So I think if you have a problem,
That's what really makes people live.
what?
Those groups of friends.
Yeah, Ken.
It's critical.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but where could it, let's say somebody wants to pursue this, so where is it that they might be able to get the Cleary test, for example?
Well, okay, so Fountain Life, so I have my whole management team on the Apex program, which is the basic battery. It's MRIs, CAT scan, they'll detect 50 different kinds of cancer, and the thing is, when do you want to know? Do you want to know now or later when your options are a lot less? So you want to know early. And so I go through this battery, and I have our whole management team, and then Ann had this carotid artery surgery last summer, and I think, oh my God, it's crazy, if we lose our wives. So I've got all the wives now on the Apex program, and then if they need more high touch, like I happen to with the heart guy, so we put them in the Edge program, and so and so the government basically is pouring 19% of the GDP down the drain on sickness, right? Max, Monique's husband, Max is not here. I think Max is here. Yeah, I mean, he'll admit that he's the Medicare, Medicaid lobbyist, Social Security, and they don't. So we have a company has a wellness plan, right? Preventive health, right? And the government doesn't do that. They do curative, not preventive.
Right, and people are used to using insurance to get at health, which is usually, it's really a sickness program. So that's, I was looking for, what can a person do? Because it's kind of outside the traditional medical route with, whatever insurance company you have, and as you've said yourself, with doctors, traditional doctors, for lack of a better word.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
This is kind of interesting. I just throw this out.
Sure.
I'm all for what John's doing, 100%. That we've just been experimenting with grazing, natural grazing. And it's come out that if you graze properly, the soil is enriched, so you don't have to provide any minerals for the cattle, you don't have to fertilize, you need no pesticides, you need no additives in the soil. I mean, it's extraordinary. And we reached this because a guy locally here, Jeremy Ames, has done this with his cattle. He doesn't need to make hay. The soil is so rich, and you get so much ingredients, multiple plants naturally, the herbivores that drive this, so it works. But it doesn't, it makes the cattle live to 29, 30 years old, which is extraordinary. But it doesn't, I don't know if it's going to get us to 126 years old to live, but at least it shows when you get rid of the government stuff, you get rid of the additives, amazing things happen. And so my puzzlement with John's stuff, and I run into it with farming, is why is the conventional stuff so separate from what really works? Well, if you get rid of the conventional stuff, you get cattle live 29 years. You don't have to make hay. It's a natural environment, as opposed to cattle that only live 11 years. So, okay. So opening up that way and getting rid of government is great, but the problem is no one understands why the cattle live to be 29 years old. It's all earthworms, microbes, the birds, the cattle give nutrients to the soil. They can't figure it out. So John's opening up. He's saying get rid of this stuff.
Get rid of what?
Government, the standard
I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm just saying it's not going to keep you alive.
Well,
If you're in a curative situation, if you've got a heart attack, I mean, Ed, you got the great surgery on your heart.
Short term.
Our system works well for people in the curative thing when they are in crisis.
Short term.
But I'm talking about a plan to stay out of the hospital.
I'm talking short term works. But John's looking at long term, and this is kind of.
Well, I think John Eve can answer that. John Eve, why don't you try to answer?
Speak up for traditional medicine?
Johnny, why don't you try to talk a little about feeding the soil and letting the soil feed the plant rather than hypodermic agriculture, which is what you get when you go to when you're buying vegetables in the supermarket.
I don't know if there was a question, but certainly, certainly when you're growing vegetables, you are feeding the soil, not feeding the vegetables directly, and healthier plants who end up with less disease and less problem like that, and higher nutritional value as well.
I was reading an article the other day, and it said that the spinach that most of you were eating when you were growing up, compared to the spinach now that my children are eating, is 50% less nutrition and minerals.
Right.
And we had Popeye the Sailorman.
And you look at our children now, and they're not.
I'd like you to want to make
So
one
what do you do?
Good.
So what Ann,
Good, stand up.
Ann?
Stand
Yeah,
up.
we are ready.
All right, one last quick comment on behalf of traditional medicine. I would suggest, I please beg everyone in the room to get regular colonoscopies. It will save your life. Colon cancer kills 1 in 5 of cancer deaths, I think, and it's preventable, and the colonoscopy will prevent it. I seriously recommend it. Number 2, please get the shingles vaccine.
Yes.
I was in the first test of the shingles. I was in the study. They have a fabulous vaccine. It will get rid of this thing or make it very mild if you get it. It's the most painful thing that can happen to you. Get the shingles vaccine.
Wait,
So
which
here's
one
to
is
modern
it?
medicine in that
There's
respect.
So, obviously, this, hold on, one second, please. So obviously, this is a topic of great interest and complexity, excuse me, Roseanne, that it's a topic of great interest and complexity, and we've been really just pleased to have John, of course, and Ann, and the rest of you who are so knowledgeable in these areas. So what I'd like to do right now, because I know some people are just, just getting antsy. That's what I anticipated. They got to get their 8 hours sleep. That's right, Judy. And we've got to walk a little more tonight, right? So, it's getting late.
Walk home, don't
So
drive here.
why don't we just, if you don't mind,
Sure.
just,
Stop.
we'll end our formal comments right now. John and Ann and the others are here, and will probably not be abandoning the room anytime soon. And I'd like to thank you all for coming and for your interest and your comments and everything. Also to mention, and I really don't know the answer to this question, John has been videoing, I believe, this talk. So is it going to be possible that people could access this
absolutely.
video? And how
Matt-
could they do that?
I think we'll put it on YouTube.
Okay.
If that's your
And so
permission.
you'll let
What's
me
the
know,
title?
and then we can publicize that within the club environment. Some of you who are from outside of the club, which is fine, will also put it out on our social media communiques in case you don't find it on YouTube, which you probably will. But anyhow, at the end of the day, thank you on behalf of the Fauquier Springs Country Club and the rest of us. Yay, John, and thank you for coming.
Bravo.
Oh, yeah, it was a pleasure.
have a chance to.
Did you come, you have to come back. I mean, we have a new chef here, and it's